Hello and a very warm welcome to you all. It's great to have you with us today. So in today's session, we're going to take a deep dive into the frontline divide, the hidden cost of the disconnected workforce. So I'm Eva, the manager of the customer engagement team here at Oak Engage, and I'll be your host for this session. So before we jump in, I've got just a couple of housekeeping points. This webinar is being recorded and will be distributed after the session. So please be mindful when sharing information that you don't want to share anything confidential. We'd love to hear from you, so please feel free to use the chat functionality to get in touch and share your thoughts and questions as we're chatting. Plus, we'll be launching a few polls, so we look forward to your feedback. So what are we going to cover? Well, we've surveyed over 1,000 frontline workers from a range of industries in the UK to understand their attitudes towards work and if they really, truly feel valued by their employer. We'll explore the results of our exclusive research to understand why so many frontline workers feel isolated, and we'll be sharing practical steps on how organisations can close that gap between the head office and the front line. Now, communication breakdowns have a real business cost. Poor communication directly affects performance, engagement, customer experience, and retention. So there really is a true cost for these missed messages. Frontline employees feel increasingly isolated and disconnected. Many don't receive regular updates or feel unseen by leadership and struggle to access vital company information. So we're going to share some best practices for effective frontline comms. Furthermore, we'll explore insights into the attitudes of the frontline workforce across different industries to understand how best to connect, appreciate, and retain them for the long term. With expert commentary and real-world insights from organisations who have successfully connected their frontline workforce, you'll leave with actionable tips to implement in your internal comms and engagement strategy. So you might be wondering who Oak Engage are. We're an intranet software provider, and our platform empowers you to reach and engage your deskless and desk-based workforce, streamline onboarding, and deliver targeted communications. It's an essential go-to for employees, whether they're looking to keep up to date with the latest company news or to find important documents and resources. Everything they need is in one place. Now, the frontline divide is a challenge we help our customers navigate on a daily basis, helping them to reach our frontline workers with our mobile app. Now, I am thrilled to be joined today by three tremendous experts. Firstly, we have Jenni Field, who is the founder and CEO of Redefining Communications and an expert in leadership, credibility, and internal communication. She's also the co-founder of a new consultancy called The Belief Builders, which focuses on helping organisations build trust and stronger connections. Jenni spends most of her time working with leaders and internal comms professionals, helping them improve the way they communicate and bring a bit more calm and clarity to what can sometimes feel like total chaos. She's written 2 books, Influential Internal Communication and Nobody Believes You. And she's also carried out 2 pieces of research into how to communicate with deskless workers, one back in 2019 and another in 2023, to see what's changed since COVID. Our second speaker is Sacha Thomas, who is the Internal Communications Content Manager at River Island. She is all about creating content and shaping the internal tone of voice and brand, making sure everyone at River Island feels connected, informed, and excited about the work that they're doing. She also plays a big role in bringing River Island's employer brand and employee value proposition to life, helping not just the people inside the business to be proud to be part of it, but also inspiring new talent to want to join. And our final speaker, very last but not least, is Brodie, the Internal Communications Manager at Five Guys. He brings a really unique perspective to this conversation, having spent the past 13 years with Five Guys, starting out as a crew member and working his way up to his current role. So he's truly seen that full journey from frontline to the support office. These days, he's responsible for making sure messages flow smoothly across the business, and he also helps organise events that keep everyone connected and engaged. So with such a strong mix of experience and insight in the room, I know that we're in for a really thoughtful and inspiring discussion on how to truly connect and support the frontline workforce. So across the industries, frontline employees are the heartbeat of every organisation. They are the people who keep operations moving, who represent the brand to the customers, and who keep businesses running day to day. Yet, despite their critical role, many feel isolated, unheard, and undervalued. We wanted to understand this disconnect, what it looks like, and what the risks to businesses, and most importantly, what we can do to fix it. To dig into these questions, last month we surveyed 1,000 frontline workers across the UK. These employees work in businesses ranging from 1,000 to 5,000 employees, spanning a wide range of sectors. We wanted our research to shine a light on the realities of the frontline divide, listen to real workers and their experiences. I'm going to share some stats with you now. We found these stats paint a really powerful picture. 81% of frontline workers say customers suffer due to poor communication. 75% frontline workers feel isolated from their company culture and community. 74% are saying that poor communication makes it harder to do their jobs, and they have that feeling of disconnect, which makes them more likely to actually want to quit. So we can see here, this isn't just a comms issue. This is a culture and retention challenge that we face. When we asked frontline workers to describe how poor communication affects their day-to-day work, their words were really revealing. We heard about critical safety updates getting missed, duplicating work unnecessarily, customer complaints increasing, and even employees feeling unable to report unethical behaviour due to the lack of clear, safe channels. Nearly half of our frontline employees that we surveyed, 47%, say they rely on word of mouth to get company updates. 45% have actually missed a critical update because of poor communication. So in the rest of today's session, we're going to explore what this means for organisations, the risks and also the opportunity that comes from reconnecting with the front line. Now, I'm sure you've all had quite enough of my voice, so I'm now going to open up to our expert panel discussion. I'm going to start by calling on you, Jenni. When you see these results, what stands out most to you?
Thank you for having me. So the biggest thing that stands out for me is the impact that it has on customers. And I think we've forgotten that correlation between communication experience and customer experience. I think the other thing that I always have a sort of word of caution about with some of these things is, what do we define as communication for the front line? So in my own research, I know that when we asked people around information they receive or communication, it's too broad a term. So I think the biggest piece of reflection for me is making sure that anyone listening to this is really drilling into that specifics in the organisation that they're in. So making sure that people are being clear about what it is that they're not getting. So whilst we might say they're not getting the compliance information or they're not getting the safety information, that's really specific, that's really helpful, we can do something about that. But if they're just saying that it's sort of bad messaging or we didn't hear about something, it's too vague, and they might be thinking of their WhatsApp chat with their team, whereas you're thinking about a corporate email. So I think it's getting into those specifics, but the biggest thing is making sure that you're looking at communication linked to business outcomes. And the voices from the front line here are really clearly articulating the fact that there is a critical issue with business outcomes linked to communication, whether that's tools, channels, people, whatever it is. And that's the bit to really focus on.
Couldn't agree more. And I think it is really important that we make sure that we're both, management and the front line are joined up in terms of understanding what they mean by that communication and what's missing and what's actually required. So, Sacha, I'm just going to call upon you now. Were you surprised that 75% of people say they feel isolated? And were there any other standout stats here for you?
I wouldn't say I'm necessarily surprised, and that's me talking from the perspective of a business that's predominantly retail. And we've got however many people in store and head office to communicate to. And I think sometimes we forget about the disconnect between the two and just assume we can communicate to everyone in the same way. Also taking into account that all these stores are in different locations. Luckily, I say luckily, I don't have to deal, with global teams. It is predominantly UK based, but even communications within those different regions is a lot different to how I talk to people in head office or talk to people in London. Like there's a different group, there's different cultures. So having that, I guess, building that connection is not the easiest thing. So the numbers don't, I'm not surprised by the numbers at all. And also taking into account everyone's perspective and reality is different. The reality of head office is a lot different to the reality of retail. Not everyone has a lot of time to do things, or read things or receive the communication in the same way you would in head office. Sometimes some of the messages kind of need to be straight down the line. And I think one thing we've learned is it's important to find the right rhythm and give people the information in the way that they're going to receive it in the best way, knowing your business to the point where you know your people enough to communicate with them the information that they need in the most effective and the best way, and making messages fit into their day and not necessarily add an extra layer to it. So I definitely think it's something that we see here at River Island, but it's just about, again, understanding your business and going back to the point made earlier as well, not just, oh, I'm not receiving it, but why? What can we do to help? What can we do to support, and kind of understanding that a bit, which helps a lot. So yeah, I definitely think distance and the locations and the different like shift patterns it adds to the isolation, I guess.
It's another layer of complexity as well, doesn't it? So Dale, I'm going to come to you. Just from your experience, I'm just curious whether any of these voices from the front line resonate for you and the experiences that you've had over your kind of career at Five Guys.
Yeah, absolutely. When we see the things here that have come from the front line, it's stuff that we've seen in the past in our engagement surveys, whether it's, as we've already spoken about, feelings of isolation, increasing in absenteeism, critical compliance procedures being overlooked. We've seen those very same complaints in the past when it comes to our communications. You know, we none of this really comes as much as a surprise from me, because we know the importance of communication on kind of every factor of the business that we have here.
Okay, that's really interesting. I mean, I thought that might be the case in terms of just some of your experiences just within the industry in terms of that, you know, the feedback that you get from employees. So let me just take us through and just entering our expert panel discussion. So one of our first areas really to discover is just looking at why our frontline workers are so isolated. And I can see a poll has popped up on screen there, so I'll give you just a moment to respond to that. Now, our research has revealed 75% of frontline workers feel isolated from their company culture and community. Jenni, what advice would you give to an organisation looking to reconnect their frontline workers to their culture, to build that trust and enhance the feeling of belonging?
It's not a small ask, is it? Let's be honest.
No.
I think the biggest thing that's come up in the research I've done, which is obviously before this, but is the importance of line managers. And I think that we've said it a lot. I've been in this world of internal communications for a very long time now, and line managers have always come up as being core. In the first piece of research I did in 2019, it was staggering actually how important line managers are. And that research showed that if your frontline workers perceive your line manager to not be a good communicator, they perceive the whole organisation to be poor at communication, which means that even if you're doing the best, most brilliant award-winning work at the centre, it's not going to make any difference if that line manager isn't a good communicator. So that would be the one piece of advice. I think if you could invest in anything, it's going to be that, because that line manager does have to be that conduit. Even if you put technology in to speak directly to the front line and give them the opportunity to speak back, that line manager is still their most trusted source. They are very local in terms of what they're doing. That's their world. That's the most important thing. And so if you want them to feel part of something bigger, we've got to make sure that that's people-led and not just trying to be the organisation talking at them that feels faceless and very, very far away. So it's the line manager piece for me that's really key in making sure that we're trying to build that connection.
Yeah, it's kind of, I guess, making sure that your line managers, one, are good at passing those messages on. So we need to make sure that we're actually communicating with them effectively, as well as putting that message out into the wider audience as well. Yeah, it's a really top tip. That goes back to that kind of saying of, you don't work for the company, you work for your boss. It really does ring true here. I don't think there's a truer saying. So anyway, we have also found through our research that nearly half of our frontline employees, I think it's 47%, depend upon that word of mouth, just as you were mentioning there, Jenni, for that kind of company update. That's, personally, I found it quite a shocking statistic, given the amount of tech and comms channels that we have available. It's really interesting that people are still, that is people's preferred method, is that human kind of interaction. And interestingly, one of our kind of participants of our survey gave some feedback saying that they feel neglected and unheard, which prevents frontline workers from offering that valuable on-the-ground insight to leadership as well. So that missing that face-to-face communication is probably meaning that is missing. And then I guess sometimes there's maybe the risk that it might go to the line manager and not go any further, which is where perhaps technology comes in to enable people to have that voice from the ground workers straight to the leadership team. Maybe it's cutting out the people in the middle, because I feel like the leaders are really missing out here, because often those who face the problems on a daily basis are those that are likely to hold the key to actually resolving some of the issues. So I'm going to come to you now, Sacha, just in terms of how you tackle the isolation caused by different shift patterns and locations at River Island. I'd be intrigued to hear how you address that situation.
Yeah, one thing I always say is, firstly, meeting people where they are. So understanding how people operate is the most important thing, because you can't, there's no point in guessing. How do people want to receive the information? What are they telling you? And kind of, again, just knowing your business as in and out as possible. I feel like there is a huge, you just touched on it, but there's so much importance in having two-way communication, and getting people to give that feedback, not just for feedback's sake, but listening, or them being a part of the communication as well. Comms is not a standalone role. It's not just there for like one team or one person to do. It needs to be the whole business being a part of it. And it's so interesting as well when you're talking about word of mouth, because I think we forget businesses also reflect real life, and that is how we communicate with each other. It is word of mouth as well, but it's about how reliable is that information? Where are people getting it from? Is it like the business sharing the right information for people to kind of pass along, etc., etc.? Like, that's how we operate. And then when you do hear it, is there somewhere for you to kind of go back to have that one source of truth, and that information? So I'd say two-way communication is super important. Keeping messages relevant. So if you are somebody who is working in store, your shift pattern or whatever, if you can go back to like having that piece of information, again, that one source of truth. But when you are receiving something, is it relevant? Because if not, I am switched off and I don't feel connected to the business that is talking to me. So I might have sent for example, me sending something out and it's just to head office teams, and somebody who has taken the time out from store to read a message from the business that's not relevant to them, I then feel isolated because I feel, oh, they're not talking to me and that's irrelevant. And then I kind of switch off from communications from there. And equally as well, if I am sending something and it is relevant and they are getting it, is it a mirror? Does it reflect how they see themselves in the business as well? We can't kind of just talk at people. We kind of need to communicate with them to the point where they feel connected. So are they seeing themselves in the messages? Which is why, again, that line manager conversation is so important, because when you communicate to line managers properly, they then start talking to their teams in the way that the business speaks, so that when the business does speak to them directly, everything kind of feels connected and you feel like you're working from the same business and you understand. And we had that quite a bit. I was going to say before I started, not saying that I fixed it, but I'm just saying we had this quite a bit kind of at the beginning where retail were communicating in their own way, and then head office were communicating in their own way. And then when you communicate from comms, no one understands because it's a completely different language, and we can't communicate the way retail communicate because head office wouldn't understand, and vice versa. So creating this, everyone kind of singing from the same hymn sheet in the same language just makes it easier and makes people feel less isolated. So it doesn't matter who you talk to in the business, if it is word of mouth or it's a message from the business or your line manager or whatever, everyone is kind of saying the same thing in the same way, in a way that matters, and you kind of see it reflected. So I think that's something, yeah, I'd say those are the things that really, really help a lot.
Having that strong brand identity really helps, doesn't it? Because then people trust that message that comes as well, because they know that it's coming in that familiar tone of voice and it feels like it's part of the organisation. So yeah, 100%, that's super important. We've also seen here with the stats that it's commonplace for frontline workers to have limited access to communication channels. Our survey revealed that 38% of frontline employees, for example, say they're the last to hear the company news. And it was a very similar number, 39% said that they feel like their voices weren't fully heard by the wider business. So Dale, I'm going to come to you, having had that first-hand experience on the front line. Can you think of an example of when you've had messages that were taking too long to reach you, and how did that feel? Can you share that with us? And I'm asking to go back in time here.
I know, yeah, many years. Funny enough, so back when I first started with Five Guys, it wasn't too much of a problem because when I worked in store, we had 3 stores while I was working on the line. So in total, I think we had somewhere in the region of 60 crew members. And almost daily, you had someone from the support office popping in, updating you on something. You'd have those shift briefs every day. Fast forward to 6 years later, and we opened store number 100 in the UK. And all of a sudden, you have 5,000 employees going everywhere from Portsmouth to Aberdeen. And all of a sudden, you can't be in every store every single week. So you all of a sudden realize that of your 5,000 employees, only 100 of them in the field and in the stores have access to email. All of a sudden, the majority, over 90% of your team don't have access to your email, and you're just hoping the message is getting passed on to them. And that's about the time we realized we needed to look into a platform and a new tool enabled to communicate with everyone from crew members to our CEO.
Yeah, I can imagine that must have been super frustrating from a comms perspective as well, when you're putting the messages out to people thinking we're trying to get that out, but if it's just not landing because the people are not receiving or checking their emails, then it makes it so difficult. So let us take a look at the kind of, I guess, the cost to the business, where, what's the result of this poor communication? Now, it doesn't just affect the employee, as we've spoken about there. There is a far wider reaching impact, from a reduction in productivity, with 74% of our survey participants saying that with poor communication, it makes it harder for them to do their jobs effectively. We've had customer experience failures, with 81% of our frontline employees agreeing by saying that the customer suffers as a result of the poor communication. Jenni, I'm curious to hear your perspective on the impact of information not being easily accessible and the cost of excluding frontline employees from key comms.
Great question with this audience, because when we talk about that sort of key information or critical information for this audience, we have to come back to that piece about relevance, which Sacha was saying. It's got to be relevant for them in order for it to actually be worth them listening to or paying attention to or reading. And relevance is really important, because when content isn't relevant, that's when we say it's very noisy in here. So that's kind of the same thing. So the relevance piece is key. The other thing here is about making sure that the content and information is being shared in a way that a frontline worker can easily digest, absorb, hear, read quickly. In our second research in 2023, we found that deskless workers only had about 10% of their time not doing their work. And this is this cultural difference between frontline workers and office workers. They spend 90% of their time doing their work. So serving customers in the store, so looking after patients, on the factory line, whatever it is, that's 90% of their time. That doesn't mean then that there's 10% dedicated to sitting down and having a look at the internet. It's that 10% is maybe their breaks, or it's, just picking up some admin, all the other stuff they might need to do. So in order for that communication to really cut through, it has to be quick. It has to be, 5 stories, headlines, things that are really relevant that they can quickly read and then they can move on, because they have got such limited time. And I think that's what we forget, because we are, as office-based workers, we are communicating all the time. Our job is communication, because we're in email, we're in Slack, we're in Teams, we're doing papers, we're doing presentations, we're doing all of this stuff all the time. So it's easy for us to go between sending a quick email to writing a report to picking up the phone. We're all doing that all the time. They are not. So that respect for their time and understanding that they aren't in that same environment as us is so important if you want them to read the information that you want to give them. It's that 10%, and really that works out based on a presentation I saw from a large pizza chain at an event a little while ago. They shared that they work on about 15 minutes a week, if that people have in order to read something. So if you work on that as a basis, then less is definitely more. So really tighten that up.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And you do have to put yourself in the shoes of the receiver of that information. And remembering that people they are there to do their role, and this is kind of a nice to have, as much as it's important for their role to be able to often to help them do what they need to be able to do. But it's just having that real key understanding about the amount of time genuinely that people have to dedicate to actually finding out and exploring to find this information. That's a really valid point. Thank you, Jenni. Now, we can see here that we've got rising turnover costs is also one of the other elements that hits the business from these poor comms. And Sacha, I know that there's things that you do at River Island and something that's part of your role in terms of looking to reduce that employee turnover. I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about that, please.
Yeah, I think communication plays, I know us as communicators are banging that drum about how important communications is in terms of morale. And one of the things I always say, because obviously everyone has a different lens that they look at the business through. And I think it doesn't matter what lens you look through, communication is always, whether people are saying it explicitly or not, or don't realize they're saying it, communication plays such a huge role. And where we are, River Island, a customer first business, a people first business, but we look after our customer. When people don't have the right communication, they don't have the right information, they don't know where to go for things, they don't know what's going on, it can affect our brand reputation, it can affect just what we're sharing with the customer, it can affect morale and updates. It doesn't just stop at people missing information. It does have an impact on the rest of the business. And the thing that we do the most is selling product to our customers. And we've had things where people didn't get a business update and they didn't know, for example, a product was launching, a customer comes in and asks about it, and they aren't able to give the relevant information. That doesn't just affect that terrible customer experience, but also as the employee, how do you feel when your friends are coming to ask you about a new product launch or things happening and you don't know anything about, what's happening in your business? I think there is obviously an onus on the employee to make sure they're reading the relevant updates and getting all the information, etc. But as Jenni said, if you're not giving it to them in the right way, they've got 15 minutes, let's say, a day to read that information. How do we get them the right information that they need to help them feel confident enough to then go out on that shop floor or go out on the front line or wherever and talk to the right people, give them the right information with confidence, and kind of just open up and share. And I think we are also working in an era now where a lot is done behind a screen. People are kind of in their safety zones and, you know, protected by screens and phones and all of this kind of stuff. But people are finding it a bit more, I don't know, they're a bit more cautious about going out face to face and meeting people and talking to customers and kind of getting out there. So I think there is more pressure and more onus on us giving them the right tools to give them the confidence to then go out and do that, because the added pressure of anxiety and hiding, once you give them the right tools and equip them with the right information, they can kind of just go out and be confident and talk to people and share what they know, and kind of not have that fear. And all of that it bottles down into what culture are you creating, what morale, what environment are you creating to kind of build these people up. And it's so important. Communication is at the heart of that and is at the root of that. And I think people forget that sometimes. So yeah, I'd say communication, obviously, as we know, is key, but it's the driver behind the morale, behind the confidence and the engagement with people, and keeping people confident enough to kind of stay and be invested in the brand and be able to talk about it confidently with customers and people they come into contact with.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I think it's important that we don't kind of lose sight of that, giving people the tools that they need to be able to do their role to help reduce that kind of employee turnover. And if people feel like they're supported and they've got an environment where they can thrive, then you're more likely to retain that employee in your business long term. And again, as you mentioned, it's all done through effective communication, so that they have got and they understand where they can access the information, the toolkit and everything that they need. Now, there's also a key impact in terms of relaying critical information, with 45% of our frontline employees having missed critical update due to poor comms, and 37% of them saying that they find it difficult to access important information at work. Dan, I'm curious to hear your insights on the customer experience at Five Guys. Have you measured any change since implementing the mobile app, and has it helped from a compliance consequences perspective as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of our customer experience, that's the most important thing, and that for us is the goal that everyone in this business is working towards. So whilst everyone's got their own little slice of it, whether it's the procurement team, the property team, communications, we know at the heart of the business, it's about making perfect burgers and fries and great customer service. That's what we're all about, and that's what everything comes back to. So making sure the customer has this amazing experience when they come in store is so critical, and that includes having a safe experience in store. For anyone who's been into a Five Guys, you'll know we have open boxes of peanuts sitting in every store. This is something that to some people is a major allergen and is something that can cause them harm. Our fries are cooked in peanut oil. These are all things that we know we need to let our customers know, and the only way we can let our customers know is by letting our teams know. That way they can be informed with the right knowledge. It was so much harder back in the day to be able to get this information out to everyone. We know when we launched some kind of LTO, limited time offers around milkshakes that would bring in new allergens, we can update a card, again, send it to a store and hope for the best that the manager has told them all. But under the 600 other things a manager's having to balance at the same time, it might slip their mind. So having a tool that we're able to now message every single employee and say, hey, along with all the changes that have come in, there is a new soy allergen in our new milkshake. Please make sure you've updated your allergen chart is massive. Making sure that we're compliant, making sure that our stores are up to date on the latest changes to compliance is so critical. And since we implemented the app, we know that we've seen better results when it comes to our food safety scores, eco-shore visits, all of those different areas that we deal with, being a hospitality brand.
Yeah, I guess what I'm hearing there is it's really key to be able to kind of just cut through and target everybody and not just rely on that manager to be able to disseminate the information, but just make it readily available. Because then, even if one person sees it, that might then start the conversation between two colleagues in store, and so we're like, oh, have you seen this? Oh yeah, I have seen that. And it might, it gets that conversation moving and starting by having, at least if one person sees it, maybe someone, have you seen this? And then it snowballs kind of from there, and then everybody becomes informed and understands what the kind of the key communications are and how to help them to be able to carry out their roles. So the next slide, if I go the right way, I don't know what on earth I managed to do there. There's always a technical hitch somewhere. It can't be smooth from beginning to end. But let's have a look at what does truly effective frontline communication look like. Now, Jenny, you've done extensive research into the comms and remote workforces. In your opinion, what does truly effective communication look like?
So I'm going to categorize this in two different ways. So what we've heard a lot in this webinar is the experience for frontline workers who are in a retail hospitality environment, just based on the fact we've got Sacha and Dale here. And that is different to people who are on a factory floor environment. And that's an important distinction. So if we're talking about truly effective frontline comms, I need to sort of separate them a little bit, because when we did the first piece of research, we identified 3 different types of frontline worker, where we had the solitary worker, so like a bus driver or a train driver. We had a mixed worker, so in the hospitality space where you work in a sort of mixed team. And then we had the team people, which is like the fire service and people like that. We identified that in 2019 because it shows how they have different communication touch points with different people in the organisation, how they communicate differently while they're on shift. As a bus driver, I don't talk to anybody. My only communication is in the break room, and that's my downtime, and I'm just here to have a chit chat. Whereas if I'm working in a retail environment, I might be talking to someone in the stockroom or someone in the kitchen. It's a different environment. And then when we did the research in 2023, we went further on that with this factory floor and shop floor. This is particularly important when we're talking about effective communication, because it links to the content that you're sharing, because it links to the motivation essentially of that individual. So if you take a shop floor worker, they are usually somebody who might be a bit younger. There's low barriers to entry for them coming into that workplace, and they usually care about that brand. Like, they've chosen to work for River Island or Five Guys or somewhere like that because they care about it, they're interested in it, and they need to know about that brand in order to sell those products to the customers, because the customers are coming in because they know that brand and they like it. If we then look at a factory floor worker, which would be somebody working on a manufacturing line, it also would include paramedics, nurses, that sort of population. These people are very skilled workers. They've usually had to be educated up to degree level, if not into more skilled areas. And they work usually based on the location. So whether or not they are working for a welding company or a manufacturing company or a defense company, whatever it is, it's usually location based for where their skills can be used. My sister's a nurse. She works at her local GP practice. She can't sort of go and, oh, I'm going to go and be a nurse over here and commute 45 minutes. That's not how that world works. And so what they care about are their skills, their development. They care about that feeling of being valued as much as a shop floor worker, but they're more interested on their skills and how they can develop. This is important when it comes to effective communication, because if you start communicating about the vision and values more than you communicate about them as an individual and their skills to a factory floor worker, you're going to do more damage than good. So it's understanding these nuances between frontline workers and the depth and understanding about them as a whole culture, but then how we can break that down is what will lead you to doing effective frontline communication. It is not a quick fix, and I would love to stand here and say, just get a digital platform and it'll be great. But that takes a lot of strategy, a lot of governance, a lot of consideration. But really, it comes down to your content strategy, and it also comes down to that investment in managers.
Yeah, and I think there's a little bit more in there. I think from what I'm hearing you saying there, Jenny, is also about knowing your audience and how to actually communicate with them and what's going to hit and what's going to resonate. If you can really miss the mark and actually totally disengage your employees, if it's a comms manager, you get it way off, and you can do more harm than good, I think, if you're not careful.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's making sure that as a comms person, you're tapping into some of that development skills-based content and not just the brand vision values content. It's really important to make sure that you're understanding all of those elements of an employee life cycle and what's important to people for them to feel motivated, engaged, and all of those things.
Thank you so much. And we're now going to come to you, Sacha, and I'm going to ask you, like, when tackling comms at River Island, what strategies have you found most effective?
I'll go back to what I said at the beginning, just meeting people where they are. And I think basically to what everything Jenni said, basically, plus more. But it is about meeting people where they are and fully understanding your workforce, understanding who they are, the different kind of, I guess, in terms of strategizing it. We kind of built internal profiles for the likely types of communicators. So obviously we're in the retail business and we know that they're on the shop floor and connecting with customers, etc. But within that, there are like different characteristics and personalities that kind of you can group them into different categories as well. And then figuring out how to communicate to those different categories or finding out what they like, how do they like to be communicated to, and not, again, just not giving them more noise and more work to do, more things to read, but fully understanding, okay, what do you want to know? We found out that our teams, for example, love video content. So we put a bit more investment into that, getting the right equipment to make sure we send them the content that they can watch really quickly, or like how they respond to it. They love doing their own TikToks and things. So, and they also love seeing themselves. So instead of me getting in front of the camera and saying, you should know this, etc., etc., how do we let them see other teams and how they're doing it? Also listening to different stories and knowing that there are people you kind of work within your team in the store, and you kind of know your teams, you kind of know a bit about head office, etc. But seeing that other teams that work within the business, you know about them, you don't necessarily see them all the time, seeing how they do things and how their store layout is different, giving you different ideas and kind of giving that opportunity to connect. And also one thing, again, I said this at the beginning, but that I found was really effective, because when we stopped doing this, it had such a huge impact, and that's two-way dialogue or two-way communication. We didn't necessarily stop doing it purposely. We ended up having a platform that didn't make it easy to see people or connect people. And we ended up using Teams, where retail and like all of our frontline workers were in this channel. And then we had a channel for head office, but it meant that head office couldn't see retail and retail couldn't see head office, and kind of, again, bridging that gap. And then you've got the whole conversation of, oh, I feel isolated. Well, yeah, because there were two separate things happening. So bringing kind of people together, but also giving people the opportunity to speak to each other and have that two-way communication with us as well, so we understand what's working, what's not working. And obviously, as you can see on the screen, now having this platform, seeing all of the amazing things happening, I get really excited. I'm not in store all the time, but seeing some of the stuff that happens in the front line, them getting excited to show you their long receipts, and show you their successes and their mini moments that we don't necessarily have access to. But again, seeing somebody from another store and their successes and their moments, like, oh, we do that too, or we should try this. And again, it builds morale, it gets people excited about things, and it boosts engagement and gets people talking as well. And again, the biggest thing is just having that one source of truth, having that one-stop shop. So when it does get loud, people can choose to block it out and then receive the information in the way they want to receive it. Do they want to, on a Friday, scroll through the news that's been happening every week or every day? Do they want to take that 15 minutes to kind of look through it? They kind of decide how they want to see it and receive it, and giving them the different options on how they want to receive that information and not forcing it down their throat has been really effective, and creating the island has helped us do that really effectively.
It's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that insight with us, Sacha. I'm sure that's resonated with people on the call as well, in terms of just taking some insights away from that they can then go and apply in their world too. So Dale, no surprises, we're coming to you now. And I'm going to ask you basically pretty much the same question. So in your experience, what has been the most effective communication mechanism for your frontline workers?
Yeah, absolutely. Chatty Patty, our internal comms app, has made the world of difference, being able to communicate with everyone. When we put together communications, I think it was something that you mentioned earlier around 15 minutes of time that you have with everyone in a week. And I guess I've always looked at it more on the micro version of that, in that I use that read time that's there on the articles. You have 1 minute, 3 minute articles, making sure that when I speak to departments and they have an update to go out to the stores, I always read through it first. And sometimes there can be a lot of technical jargon, sometimes there can be quite a lot of fluff in there. And, you know, our guys in stores, they're operators, they're moving fast, they don't have a lot of time. So the two best ways we found to communicate is in that very too long didn't read style, just a quick, give me the bullet points of the messaging. And video content has gone down really well with our guys. Videos that are kind of that almost social TikTok style, 30 seconds to a minute, where you can cover the whole topics in there. The bit of the app that I love most as a communications tool, similarly, is the feed, the Get Chatty, the two-way communication on there. In this last week, we've been getting ready for our opening in Heathrow, our very first airport location over here in the UK. If any of you are stopping by Terminal 5, please pop in. We're brand new. We'd love to have you. And it was amazing to see through Chatty Patty. You would get to see the excitement people had, the crews in the store winning shift star of the day, going through that kind of whole journey of onboarding all the way through to their store being open. And that's the way they're able to communicate with each other and with our support office as well. And then we get down there as well as a communications team. I was there on Monday at the crack of dawn for the opening at 5 a.m. to capture it, to capture that energy so that we can post a larger article on their behalf, make them really feel seen, special, as they should, because they've done an amazing job and amazing things happen. So give them that recognition they deserve. That's definitely my favorite form of communication that we have on the app. But you know, whether it's I always divide it up into either it is a piece of entertainment, and that would be something like that, highlighting an opening, highlighting a crew member of the month, Olympics competition that we like to do, you know, something that has an entertainment value, something that has a educational value. So whether it's a new training standard, an update on our gifts and anti-bribery policy, as you can see there, and that's the content that needs to be short, succinct, and quick. So kind of entertain and engage, or inform and educate. They're kind of the two ways that we look at communications, and keeping it short, snappy, but sincere, I think is the most important.
Yeah, I think you have a really nice blend of that, the information that you need, but also keeping it fun. It really kind of just, it meets the needs of everybody, and you can kind of not pick and choose, because obviously you want people to be reading your bribery policy, and the fact that it's only a minute read is impressive, because I think some policies and organisations could tend to have this really long, lengthy read time. So yeah, well done on that.
The bribery policy is don't accept bribes.
Yeah, simple. Just don't do it.
Don't do it.
Just don't do it. Do the right thing. If you think it's wrong, don't do it.
Don't do it.
That brings us to the end of our kind of conversation. So I'm going to open it up to the Q&A at this point. Now, I did see a question pop into the chat just before when we were talking about, I think it was Sacha, when you were talking about add out the app, and Sacha, I'll let you fight between you in terms of maybe they'll call on you each. But how did you get people to use the app? Sacha, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, so our platform is still kind of new. I will say that first. I think that especially for frontline workers, the best way they have Teams on their phones, and I know they used to use WhatsApp, and then they moved to Teams on their phones. I think getting them to adopt the app wasn't too difficult because we kind of closed down the team channels for where they used to upload their long receipts and the fun stuff and their moments and things, and then just saying to people, look, we want you to now upload it to the island and share your moments on the island. And I know, like, the first thing I know people go, how do I do that? I don't know how to do it. It's too difficult. I'm worried, blah, blah, blah. So filmed a video showing them exactly how to do it, making the app, obviously it's very easy either way, but making the app look like the most easy, simple, fun, exciting way. And that softens people. And again, going back to giving them that confidence to then go and do it themselves. And we've seen a huge uptake in them now uploading. We've just recently closed the channel and now people are uploading receipts left, right, and centre. So we could confidently say it is working. But then also, again, making it really simple and easy. So we know the change is going to panic people, but giving them the answers to the questions before they come in, it gives them the confidence and calms them down a bit. So that's really helped.
Thank you. Dale, do you have anything to add?
I feel like it was unfair on our side because we started working with Oak. I believe we started designing the app in November 2019. Then we started testing it in January with the idea of rolling it out maybe later in the year. March 2020 really sped it up. And so we had 48 hours to basically tell all of our teams, hey, stores are closed. But luckily, we have a brand new app here that will tell you exactly what's going on. That was, I think we ended up with, is it 97% adoption rate at that point.
So what you're saying is we need another pandemic.
It's very unfair.
Trying not, it is cheating, and I'm not recommending that anyone kicks off a new pandemic just to get your comms platform up. But I think giving people a reason to go on a new platform, sometimes for teams in stores, it can feel like we're just doing things for the sake of doing things or to justify an expense or something like that. You have to get their buy-in. You have to give them a reason that it's there. And for our guys, it's really easy. This is the way to get the most, to get all the information that you will need. And if there's something that you're not sure where it is, Chatty Patty is the place to go that will point you in the right direction. Yeah,
I think that's really true. It is, and it's having that something in it for the person that's coming to the platform. Because if there's nothing in it for them, then why would I come back here? If I turn up and there's nothing that's of interest or there's nothing that is enjoyable for me, then why would I keep coming back? We see some companies run competitions, for example, or employee recognition is a really great one as well, just because people love to be told that they're doing a great job and people like to tell people that they're doing a great job. And that maybe sometimes is the only reason that they'll come in and be like, oh, wow, okay, yeah, that was really, I want to recognize that person because they just, even if it's just the small things, just say thank you. And that helps to then also build that culture and take your company, build your company culture into something that you can be proud of as well. And also helps the employees and boosts that morale. I don't have any other questions at the moment, so I am going to move on and just do a little bit of a recap. And just to give you a couple of takeaways from today's session. So I guess key things really is listen to your frontline. Ask for their input. Don't be afraid. I think one of the key takeaway messages really that we've heard is to support your line managers as communicators. Don't just chuck them out there in the big bad wide world and hope that everything will be rosy and everything will happen just as you expect. You need to ensure that they have the right tools and training and that they have the comms tools and the ability to communicate with their teams. Recognise your daily wins. Don't be afraid of just highlighting some key success stories. People like to hear about when people do great things. We've heard from both Dale and Sacha today with key examples of that, like the till receipts and just celebrating new store openings. Like, who doesn't want to hear this great news? Be sure to simplify your comms channels. Don't overcomplicate it, Jenny. I'm sure this was a point that you said. Just keep it simple. Less is more. Do not flood people with every single communication message that they maybe need. Target it. Make it relevant to the audience that you're pushing it to. And also the ability to go mobile first. In today's modern era, there are not many people that don't have a mobile device in their pocket that could then enable them to have and receive that communication. And there's more. We have some resources that we'll be sharing. So here at Oak, we will be sharing a recording of today's session along with the Frontline Toolkit and our survey results. For keep an eye out for that landing in your inbox. So finally, I would just like to say a special thank you to our panelists today for their insights and actionable advice on the frontline divide and that hidden cost of the disconnected workforce. I'd also like to say thank you to you all for taking the time out of your day to join us and for your questions and feedback throughout this webinar. It is very much appreciated. So take care, and we look forward to seeing you next time.